Hey, Phil, want to know what the worst performing superannuation fund in the country is?
Hit me with it.
Let's find out today.
All right, beautiful.
Hey guys, Scott and Phil from the Wealthlab podcast, and we wanted to run an interesting episode. I had a thought bubble when I was on the internet over the weekend, and I was like, you know what? I'm actually going to try this. I'm going to use the industry fund, compare the super portfolio tool to find the worst performing fund.
Why not? Oh, it sounds like a bit of fun.
Yeah, but here's what I found after a little bit of research, Phil. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a screen share. For those who are listening on, I'm just noodling around the compare the pair type websites because there's a lot out there. And what I found when I was preparing for this podcast was something that was the closest thing I can say is that when you are using ChatGPT about an area that you have absolutely no idea about, and it is so confident. And then when you see ChatGPT about something that you know quite a lot about, and it's so confidently wrong, and it's one of those things you're like, hang on a second, that thing there is bullshit. But this thing about, I don't know, boat quality or something like that, and I'm like, oh, that makes sense.
Yeah.
So it's this is the same scenario, which I'm going through, being like, wait a second, this is totally bullshit. But this is because I know about it. But if I didn't know about this would be, one, really confusing, and two, kind of a bit misleading. And here's where I'm going to go. So what I'm doing, screen share. Can you see my full screen, Phil?
Yeah.
So what I've done is I've literally just Googled MySuper funds. And Phil, for the listener, what is at the top? What's the top sponsored link?
Sponsored by Aware Super.
Aware Super. Okay, right. So they're a pretty big super fund. So now we go on to the industry super funds. Okay. So we know there's 7 of them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Phil, what's missing from this list?
The other 6 billion super funds in the country?
That and Aware Super is also missing here. Want to know why?
Please enlighten me.
Yeah, I know. That was a setup. There's a few funds that refuse to pay industry super fund their licensing fees because they see it's a bad use of member money.
Yeah, I mean, I'd probably agree.
So this is the same thing as that check mark. If you go, you know, that kangaroo, we all know what the logo is. It's the Australian made green and gold check mark. They charge a really significant licensing fee if you want to use their logo. And it's exactly the same with industry super funds. They're basically just a lobbying body that a cluster of groups will come together. They will license it, and then they will, as a group, market together. So based on that, what I've done is I've jumped into the Your Super comparison tool. There's a lot out there, and a lot of them are very confusing. So I actually thought I'd start with the Australian government ATO compare your comparison tool. And what comes up is fairly, I won't say it's not, I won't say it's, there's just a lot of stuff in here. So what we're going to do is we're in it, there's 54 super products found, and we're going to filter by worst performing.
We probably should qualify too that this tool only compares MySuper options, which for anyone, which is the default option with the fund.
Yeah, cool. And we should also point out this is not financial advice. Go and see a financial advisor for this, for comparing these options. I mean, I think Phil, you could do a point on the difference between general and personal advice at the end here. But there's just like a lot of options here that don't make sense. And I have picked the worst one, according to this list. It's the Smart Future Trust. God knows what that is, but look, I've clicked into it, right? So the Smart Monday Prime MySuper option, it's saying its 10-year return is between 2.8% and 6.5%. Now, I don't know how you could have such a gigantic variance.
I'm just itching to explain that one because I actually had that prepped and ready to go, but since your screen's up, we can get into it.
Okay, what is it? Do you want to go now, or am I on a roll? What's the difference, Phil?
No, you go. We'll come back to it.
Well, it's actually, first of all, what they've done is they're just picking numbers from random spots, and nothing ever matches up. So if you were trying to do your due diligence, trying to find something that works, this is just an example of like why it's so difficult for someone who's not in the industry. And this is why we have a suite of tools that's completely different when it comes to comparing supers. We pay a lot of money. We have decades of experience, and the tools that we have is at such a higher level of detail than what's available here. I find this, I'm not saying unethical, but I'm just saying very very difficult to compare, and I'm going to show you why. I'm clicking into the bottom performing, quote unquote, super fund. We go into premix options, which is the Smart Monday premix options here. And first of all, it's kind of not clear what they're actually talking about, what they're comparing. So they're saying that their growth fund over the last 5 years did just under 10%, and since inception has done about 7%, 6.97%. So
also
that
worth
doesn't
noting
match.
that data was about 3 months old.
Let me finish, mate. If you're worried about old data, let's really get into it. So yeah, so this is what one of the many issues that industry funds have. The data is never clear, it never matches up. It's literally these figures are 3 months old, and we're going to go into more detail. So this is the MySuper option that they quote unquote have been using. So all of the industry funds need to put forward a MySuper fund, which is they refer to as their default option. And for those that are listening, there is like 13 MySuper options on this one PDF from this one fund, making things even more confusing. And we're looking at the 10-year numbers. So the 10-year performance figures don't match what the your super comparison tool has. So it just doesn't match. It's just saying the 10-year performance of this tool is about 9%. Now this is from the 1st of January 2025. So this is almost 6 months old now. So just changing the time frame 6 months would, in theory, move this bottom performing fund to the top performing fund using its methodology. Using its methodology. Thank you, Phil.
Thank you.
So I could cut the numbers in a way that this would look potentially like it would be a top performing fund. So let's just get back to the top. So they're saying that their growth fund, where we're at here, was at the 9% range, so 8% range. And if you go to your super tool, yeah, look at that. It outperforms. It's saying Host Plus here had the best performance. But what's weird is some have got variances, some don't, which makes even less sense. And the third top performing fund, according to the ATO tool, is the Meat Industry Super Fund, which is closed.
Excellent. That's useful.
Great.
Also just noticed too that, look, we've got Australian Retirement Trust there in number 4.
Yeah, they're also last as well, yeah.
Yeah, if you resplit it, they're also last, which I think is actually Australian Retirement Trust is now the headline for the old Q Super options, which is interesting as well.
Yeah, again, what that says is there's 56 funds. If you filter by top, you've got Australian Retirement Trust at number 4, and then you filter again. Where is it? That's the second worst. Wild, this makes no sense. And the reason why it makes sense is because this is difficult. Superannuation is hard. It's such a minefield. This makes me so uncomfortable. The lack of detail and specificity that you can get. Jesus, me with the big words. You can get with the tools that we have, and this feels like, I don't know. You should be using a microscope, but you're just using your eyeballs. Something like that.
And it's worth mentioning, I'm not going to call out any specific funds right now, but you feel free to go on Google. But there's been a few of these funds that we may have mentioned just then that have recently been fined by the regulators for publishing misleading return data on their website. What do you reckon the fine was? One of the biggest funds in the country for publishing misleading return data on their website.
Oh, I know there's other fines that I was about to mention. I don't know. Which one is it and how much was it for?
It was about 18 grand.
Yeah, that's not that much. I feel like it's a lot higher.
18 grand. What a waste of time. And who's paying for it anyway? It's the bloody members.
Yeah, it's the members.
It's not going to come out of the pocket of the CEO. But what would happen to you or I if we used misleading information to provide advice to people? We would be banned.
Let's not talk about
it. We would find a hell of a lot more. It's just unbelievable. Anyway, that's a bugbear of mine. But if you want to bring your screen back up, Scott, I'll explain why there's a variance in some of those ones you're looking at, because this is another bugbear of mine that I love to rant about.
I think you can also, if you just Google ASIC, so, this is the 30th of March. This is very relevant. ASIC delivering scathing review of industry super funds as for being insensitive. That's just on news.com, which is kind of an interesting one. So what do you want me to bring back up, Phil? So
MySuper.
Yeah, this is the 31st of March. This was done. All of these fines are paid for by members, by the way. So they say they're not for profit. That's fine, but there's a reason why I don't bank with a not for profit, because they're a pain in the ass to deal with. And there's a reason you probably don't bank with a not-for-profit either, person who's listening to this podcast. So it doesn't make sense because they just take money from your funds to pay ASIC fines. Phil, where am I driving? What am I doing?
Have you got the government one still up?
Yep. Ooh.
Maybe not.
No, I don't. Hang on. Stand by. Isn't it weird having a government tool to compare options? Like it's a private. It's just such an odd thing to have.
Yeah.
I might be wrong.
They got one for electricity too.
Does it help?
I don't know if it's just as useless as this one, but there is one.
All right, I'm back. Let's go.
All right. So if you go back to the bottom performers, just because I know one of these pretty well, I don't think that's filtered back that way. Go to Australian Retirement Trust there, and if you click the little.
For those listening along, we're at the bottom of the screen. We've just clicked the bottom one, and now we are on the. It's called the MySuper Queensland Government website.
Except you've gotten too excited, so I want you to go back to where you were, and click the little drop-down arrow to the right.
Select.
There we go. Now, anyone that's listened to this podcast a couple of times has no doubt heard me rant about Lifecycle superannuation options being the worst invention since I don't know what, something else equally shit. But this is the reason why there's a variance of numbers posted there between 3.12% and 6.48%, which just incidentally is all shit outcomes. But you can see there as you go down through the list, we've got all these different named options. And the further we go down that list, the worse the returns get.
Isn't that funny?
This is a Lifecycle superannuation fund in action. They start out quite aggressive when you're young. They become more conservative as you get older. Now, I don't know about you, but just because I've arbitrarily turned 60 does not mean that I want a 3% return on my superannuation.
And for context, that's where they're at. So the sustained group, that is those in like retirement, these are the 10-year numbers, 4%, 3%, 3%. Awesome. You're getting eaten by, you're behind inflation. Those numbers.
I'm barely
you
getting
do better
inflation
with your money in an actual cash account.
What a waste of time. So anyway, if you're in a Lifecycle super fund, I strongly encourage you to reach out and speak to someone with half a brain that can design something better for you. This is not picking on QSuper. I just know the option very well, but there's plenty of funds out there that do the same thing, and it's a stupid approach.
It's just so confusing because the figures are all over the place, right? So we go into it, you just click a random one, and then it says 3% to 6%, but the time frames are difficult because if we move the time frames 3 months forward or 3 months back, it dramatically changes the perceived 10-year figures. It also, the underlying investment options are completely different. So if we were in, again, the growth options for this fund, I'm guessing it's a 6%, which is a bad return. Or if you wanted to halve your return, you can then, I don't know, do something else, but there's no risk related to this here. It doesn't show me, okay, this is what I'm getting, but what am I risking? Which is so important because capital preservation is really the things that people care about. I certainly know what I'm putting my money in. I want to make sure it's safe, but what's my risk reward? What's my Sharpe ratio? What's my underlying investments? It's just, okay, this is like driving a car with half an eye open or something. Stressing me out just looking at it. And I feel for the people who are trying their best to go through this. Maybe they've got young families or they're preparing for retirement, and they just, okay, let's just see if this works. Well-meaning, but my God, this.
It's also worth pointing out that tool only covers MySuper options. If you've made any change to your superannuation fund, you're not covered. It's not in there. You can look at the name of the fund. It's not telling you anything. So it's just something else to bear in mind. Yeah. And we should do the old general personal advice. There is nothing in this podcast that is personal advice for anyone that's listening right now.
Hey, Phil, what's the difference? Tell me the difference between personal and general.
Well, look, general advice, somebody that looks at someone like you might do something similar to this. Personal advice, based on your specific situation, because we've had a meeting and I understand the ins and outs of your financial situation and your goals in your life. This is the exact thing that I believe you should do.
Based on my understanding, my research, and all of the tools that I have at my disposal.
Exactly right. Yeah. So yeah, certainly, obviously, I haven't sat down and spoken to whoever's on the other side of this video screen right now. I don't know what your goals or retirement plans are, so don't go and do anything based off what we've said today. But other than maybe
Dude,
come
book a
and
meeting.
speak to us.
Or someone else. Or talk to your
Yeah.
parents as well. Oh my God. Like, because if someone says to me, oh no, I love my super fund. Okay, great. What's the risks within it? What's the performance looking like? What's the underlying assets doing? What's the blah, 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 blah. Does that align with your investment objectives? Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Do you have your income requirements? Yeah. All right, guys. Look, this is a short one for this month. It's just an interesting example of that when you look at something that you know a lot about and you go, oh my God, this is actually bullshit or perceived bullshit. But when you look at something you don't know anything about and be like, oh, that totally makes sense. Okay, fine.
Yep.
That occurred to me on the weekend. So that's why we wanted to jump in and make a little podcast. Thanks so much for listening. Have a great day.
Thanks, team. Cheers.